right, so another problem on solving algebraic equations, but this time we have absolute values. Okay, so what is an absolute value? You know the symbol by seeing this vertical lines, and you have something inside. So what that means is when you have an absolute value function, it wants you to take the positive version of whatever is inside. So if you have, say, for instance, 5, the absolute value of 5, the positive version of 5 is 5, right? But if you have absolute value of -5, that is still a 5. Okay. Now, in general, what is the idea in solving absolute value equations? So the idea here is just like solving for x, really, but the concept is instead of treating it as x, you have to treat it as the whole absolute value. So that means you have to isolate your absolute value. So for instance, what do I mean by that? If you have this equal sign, on the left side, you should only have the absolute value and then everything else here. Okay. And that would be the easiest way to do it. Okay. So for instance, if your problem is like this, 3 absolute value of x plus 2 plus 1 equals 5. Well, is this the case where you have the absolute value on one left side? No, not really, because you have that 3. So you need to get rid of that 3. So this means 3 times the absolute value. So how do you undo a times? You will divide it. Okay, so I'm going to divide this one by 3. I'm going to divide this one by 3. And so now you can cancel that one out. And so you will have absolute value of x plus 1 equals 5 thirds. In this case, this is good now because you only have the absolute value on one side. Okay. Another example. Let's say you have 2 absolute value of 3x plus 1, absolute value minus 5 equals 10. Is this the case? No, not really, because treat your absolute value as if that's your main variable, right? You have other things that shouldn't be on the left side. For instance, the 5 and the 2. So we need to get rid of them. So I'm going to add 5 first. I'm going to add 5. And so now this one will cancel out. You have 2 absolute value of 3x plus 1 equals 15. Is this good enough? No, not really, because you still have a 2. So therefore, I'm going to divide this because 2 times. So therefore, the opposite of times, sorry about my dog, you will divide by 2. Okay, so I'm going to cancel that one out. So now you have 3x plus 1 absolute value equals 15 over 2. So that's the idea. You want the absolute value on the left side, and then we will move on to the next part. Okay. All right. So that's a general concept. So let's answer the first problem. So my first question is it already set up in the way that it should be? Meaning, do you have the absolute value on one side and everything else on the other side? Well, the answer is yes, because you have absolute value and then nothing else on the outside of your absolute value signs, right, or symbols. And so now, so since this is already set up, then what you got to do after this is set up is separate this into two parts of an equation. Okay, so the first one is 3x minus 1, which is exactly what's inside, equals a positive 10. So you're basically following the equation, just removing the absolute value sign. The second part, though, is copy the equation again, but in this case, instead of positive 10, you will do a negative 10. Okay? And then we will solve them separately. So I'm going to solve this one, plus 1 plus 1. So therefore, 3x equals negative 9. I'm going to divide this by 3. So my first x is negative 3. So that's my first answer. Now I'm going to move on to the second one. I'm going to add 1 plus 1. So now this is going to be 3x, that's gonna cancel out, equals 11. I'm gonna divide by 3, and so now my x is equal to 11 over 3. So you have two answers. Okay, so now so you have two values for two values that will satisfy for this problem. Now let's move on to the second example. Well, is this the case where we're good? Well, no, not really, because you have your absolute value here, and then you have that plus 6 hanging around. We need to get rid of that plus 6, right? So how do you undo a plus? You will subtract 6 on both sides. So now you will have, 2x plus 5 absolute value equals 2. Okay, so now this is just like the first example. In this case, we are ready to separate them, one positive, one negative. Okay, so the first one is 2x plus 5, no more absolute value, equals 2. And then the second one is 2x plus 5 equals negative 2. And then we will solve them separately. So I'm going to do minus 5 here, minus 5. So you have 2x equals negative 3. So therefore, I'm going to divide by 2. My x is negative 3 halves or negative 1.5. So that's the first one. Now I'm going to subtract 5 here, minus 5. So I will have 2x equals negative 7. And I divide by 2, divide by 2. Therefore, my x is negative 3, 7 over 2 or negative 3.5. Okay, so again, two answers. All right, let me know if you have any questions, leave a comment or message me.